Let's get this party started!
He's shining a light in the dark corners of our media.
You are fake news.
Our government.
Handling of classified documents.
And our culture.
Don't trust anyone.
It's common sense amidst chaos.
Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
Here's your host, Ike Wingate.
Good afternoon, my friends. Welcome to the show. It is Tuesday, November 4th, 2025, just about 1 year from the historic victory that Donald Trump had. Wow. Can you imagine what life was like a year ago? Isn't it kind of weird to think about? What we were doing, boy, were we settling in for a big day. And it turned out really good. It hasn't been perfect. No, it hasn't been perfect. I don't know any time in history that it has. But, boy, a year later, so many things have changed. I think 1 year ago, technically November 5th, but, you know, the first Tuesday of November, I think back of the clip of Charlie Kirk. After Donald Trump declared the winner, he was in tears because it meant so much, and his organization did so much to bring victory to President Trump. Of course, I was with you. We were with you for hours on Election Day in 2024. And, you know, might as well get a shameless self-grandizing plug in here that I predicted every single state exactly for President Trump and, I guess, in the inverse, Kamala Harris. All 50. 50 for 50. Every single state that went for Donald Trump, I predicted, and none were incorrect for Kamala Harris. So 100%. So you can trust what you are hearing here. That doesn't mean I get it right all the time, but we do put in the work and the research and the dedication and time to try to be able to give you accurate information. So that being said, I'm glad you are with us this afternoon here as we are talking, of course, about Election Day, Virginia, New Jersey, some, and then, of course, Pennsylvania is having a Supreme Court election, which Scott Pressler says, by the way, that one of the biggest scandals in Pennsylvania history is happening right now. Chester County polling locations are running out of provisional ballots, and voters are being turned away. He said it needs to be a national story right now, red alert. We're also going to show you some other things that are going on, bomb threats. Machines are down. Big surprise, right? But the big story we're going to get to first off is Comey is cooked. James Comey is in really deep doo-doo right now, and we're going to show you what I mean by that. We're also going to talk about Whoopi Goldberg being scolded, bomb threats, and voting machines down. Pelosi is retiring. And she's getting nasty. She's a nasty, nasty woman. Nasty Nancy. What does he call her? Crooked Nancy. What does he call her? Somebody surely knows in the chat. I look forward to seeing your messages there. And Tucker and the Heritage Foundation fallout continues. This whole issue, I'm just so fatigued with it. On both sides of it. I'm so tired of talking about it. And I'm grieved for what is happening on the right. It is splintering over Israel. It's just everywhere now. And so we'll talk a bit about that. A trans terror plot has been foiled. We get some details on how to end the shutdown. I mean, we're waiting on 5 Democrat votes in the Senate. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. But I would venture to guess that after the election tonight, it's probably going to get figured out. So we'll talk about that. Plus, a trans terror plot has been I've already said that. Yes, Kash Patel and his private jet. There's been a lot of people critiquing him over that. I'm going to tell you the truth about what his options actually are. I don't like anybody flying around on a private jet on taxpayer dollars either. But does he have a choice? Dick Cheney has died at the age of 84, a guy who had 5 heart attacks, a heart replacement surgery about 12 years ago. And he is died at the age of 84. And there's a bomb threat at Regan National. Regan National, a plane from Houston to New York. That is very recent news. And so those are all the things we're going to cover and then some. How about that? That's a lot to get to. Hey, please chime in on what we're talking about in the chat. We would love to hear from you. I want to know what you're thinking about what we are talking about today. Of course, you can also support our mission, cover our hard costs, and help us out there with Cash App or Venmo by going to IkeReport.com. All right, the big development today is this case against Jim Comey, a.k.a. James Comey. The lead prosecutor in the case released handwritten notes. Basically, James Comey's defense tried to get this case thrown out. Well, then the lead prosecutor said, here's why you shouldn't. So basically, they're fooling around and they're finding out. And these are handwritten notes that were found by the FBI in those burn bags that were marked. You know, you can't just discard anything. There's a process, which I would love to ask somebody inside the FBI. You know, why would Comey put these notes in this burn bag rather than just get rid of them? But it apparently that would be a big crime. Somebody didn't get rid of this stuff. But when has crime stopped James Comey? Anyway, they show Comey was well aware that his assistant was leaking to the media and wrote, "Good job, my friend." Yeah. So let's hear from John Solomon on this. He's been on this case from the beginning. I don't know that there's anyone more knowledgeable to speak on it, so we'll let him do that.
All right, let's get down to some big bombshell news that just moved a couple of minutes ago over at justthenews.com. We've been following the story of James Comey. He's indicted for lying to Congress, saying he never authorized any of his staff to leak to the media. And late last week, as we told you, he played the victim card. I'm being maliciously prosecuted because Donald Trump hates me. Well, today, the Kash Patel FBI and the lead attorney prosecuting his case, Lindsay Halligan, well, they responded, and they responded with a lot of evidence. What did they respond with? James Comey's own emails and his own handwritten notes. And what do they show? They show that James Comey was clearly aware that his top aide was providing information anonymously to the news media. Not only was he aware of it, he wrote in a private email, "Good job, my friend," actually congratulating him when Dan Richman, one of his top lieutenants, told him what he had just done with the New York Times. Yes, just like the indictment said, the story is about Hillary Clinton's email, so it backs up the government's case that Comey was authorizing leaks to through his staff to reporters concerning a Hillary Clinton case, just like they argued. But they went a little bit further. It turns out that when Kash Patel found those burn bags in that secret room where a whole bunch of FBI evidence was sitting, they found something special, some handwritten notes by James Comey. What do those handwritten notes show? He appeared to be aware in September 2016 that of the U.S. intelligence intercept that Hillary Clinton had approved a plan to hang a fake Russian shingle on Donald Trump's house, campaign house. Now, that's important because the handwritten notes don't match with James Comey's testimony. James Comey told Congress, that doesn't sound familiar. I don't think I ever knew about that. He wrote about it in his hand notes. And finally, one will ask, well, why would James Comey do this? What was the motive? Today's emails that were just released in the court filing give us one other answer. He wrote to Dan Richman, his lieutenant, that he fully expected soon to be working for President-elect Hillary Clinton. That's right from the emails. So he was waiting to work for Hillary Clinton, and he thought that Hillary Clinton would be grateful for the way he did things in handling her email case. That wasn't what the victim card I think James Comey was planning to play. But all of that emails, all of those letters, all those court filings, even the handwritten notes, we just posted them at justthenews.com. You can go check them out today. We'll have more of that breaking news all throughout the night.
Oopsie. Then you see motive clearly there. Oh my gosh, James Comey. I mean, has there ever been anyone who played the victim more than James Comey? And I mean, he keeps doing these videos and talking about Taylor Swift, and you think they're AI generated, but they're real. But it's all about him. It's all about him. He expected to work for Hillary Clinton. That's the deal. Now, help us out real quick. Forgot to mention this. Give us a thumbs up on whatever platform you're watching on, And also give us a heart to the post if you're watching on X, and repost, share, do all that stuff right now. The sooner the better. It helps us in the algorithm. Please do that, because you want people to see this show. I mean, I have a suit and tie on for you, for crying out loud. The least you can do is share the post, right? Come on. All right. So, yeah. So this email specifically, if I think there's, yeah, here we go. If you want to look at some of these handwritten notes, we've got them on the screen for you here. Kind of hard to read, but Mike Davis has worked to decipher some of this. Let's talk about, okay, we'll talk about the handwritten note here. Let's see. So in the handwritten note, it says, undermine, basically, let's go back to the note here. Undermine HRC, which would be Hillary Rodham Clinton. Let's see. Yeah, so he's scribbling these notes. And so, confidence in the system. HRC plans to hit Trump. HRC health was something he wrote down, which was kind of weird. Then it has Kerry, Trump finance, debts to Moscow. JB, journalists saying without names. I mentioned New York Times, Russia. David, proposed use of platform to the intrusions, scans for state-covered databases. I'm sorry, HRC to tie Trump, not hit Trump. Okay, so you see that he knew all about the fact that she was behind this, and then in this email, let's see here, James Comey from his burner Gmail with his alias Reynold Niebuhr states, no need at this point. It would be shouting into the wind. Someday they will figure it out. And as Jack and Ben point out, my decision will be one a president-elect Clinton will be grateful for, though that wasn't why I did it. We're talking about the leaks here. Okay. And then you have another exhibit with a response to planting a New York Times election eve hit piece against Trump. FBI Director James Comey tells his FBI special government employee Daniel Rickman, "Well done, my friend. Who knew this would be so fun?" And that's what it says here in this email. So another exhibit is showing this special employee Rickman leaking as an anonymous source to the New York Times. And Comey testified that he never did this, by the way. And these are text messages. They're hard to read. So this does not look good for James Comey at all. And, he tried to get this case thrown out. And this is why we're now seeing this, because they're basically saying, no, there's plenty here to continue this case. Nice try. David Sling in the chat says a monkey could write more plainly with a pen up its rear. Yeah, it's almost like he wrote it for himself where only he could understand it. That's how bad the writing was. Now, we also know that during this Arctic frost investigation, this is different than Crossfire Hurricane, but same idea, right? Weaponization of government against Trump or against Republicans and conservatives. Pam Bondi putting this out that they found during this Arctic frost investigation from Jack Smith that special counsel seized President Trump's government-issued phone. Yeah, they took a former president's phone. The Biden administration turned over President Trump's phone to special counsel in unprecedented action. Not only that, special counsel subpoenaed all of President Trump's personal phone records. Pam Bondi says, I submitted these new documents to our partners on Capitol Hill. I commend our team at the FBI for working diligently to expose this. So you go in and you are, the Biden administration turns over a president's phone. I guess, after he's president, he would give it back or something like that. They're turning over all his phone records and his personal phone records. A former president. This isn't some repeated felon kind of person here. This isn't someone with, a long rap sheet. It's a former president, but they violated every which way they could his privacy in the matter. Now, you got the deep state, sort of on their heels right now. And I think it's pretty evident as we see a clip here from John Brennan, former CIA director, a guy who was in that meeting back when it was communicated to Obama, Biden, Comey, Brennan, and I believe it was Susan Rice, one other person in there, about the plan that Clinton, they called it the Clinton plan, that this Steele dossier was, but yet they used it to go in and spy on the Trump campaign, even though it was known, campaign research, Oppo research. So John Brennan is confronted about the Hunter Biden letter that Brennan signed. Remember that as well? There was this letter after the Hunter Biden story came out in 2020, a few days before the debate between Biden and Trump, which, by the way, that story was suppressed on Twitter at the time, formerly Twitter, and nobody was covering it. And many people polled afterwards said if they would have known about this and the crimes that were plainly visible in this laptop, they wouldn't have voted for Biden. Now, they put together a letter. Mike Morrell, former deputy director of the CIA, sent around an email saying, hey, we're trying to get people to, sign on to this letter. And Brennan did. Well, he was confronted about this saying, hey, you said it was Russian, this was Russia, that it wasn't, real. It wasn't a real laptop. That laptop has since been confirmed real over and over. And by the way, a year before that letter was solicited, the FBI had already authenticated and confirmed that it was, in fact, Hunter Biden's laptop. We know that through some of the IRS and FBI whistleblower testimony. So plenty of people could have put a stop to this narrative. They didn't. John Brennan, of course, signed his name to it, and he was confronted about it.
Why didn't you remember on the Hunter Biden? Why say? Because I think and you misrepresented that. We never said it was disinformation. We said it was Russian influence operations, which is what they do. There's a big difference between influence operations. No, you don't know that. Yes, Comey knew. Comey knew. The literature said it had all marks.
All right. So Brennan gets in his face, literally points his finger at him, and touches him over and over and over, planting his finger in the guy's chest for asking why he did it. Okay. And so he was confronted by this Thomas Special, national security consultant at this event. And he asked him about the laptop. Brennan says, you misrepresented that. We never said it was disinformation. We said it was Russian influence operations, which is what they do. The guy says, we literally, and this other guy who's filming says, you said it had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. Brennan said, no, we said it was Russian influence operations. Okay. Are you splitting hairs there? You said the laptop wasn't real. And by the way, in that email that went around soliciting these signatories for this letter, it said, we are trying to give the campaign some talking points for the debate on Thursday. Literally, that's what's in the email from Mike Morrell to John Brennan. They spelled it out there. I mean, they were using their positions. Now, they were retired largely, but positions of influence as the intelligence community or former intelligence community, if you want to get really specific, to sway an election. And it was a lie. And there were plenty of people that they knew that could confirm that that laptop was real. But again, back to my point, as you see John Brennan, planting his finger in this guy's chest, he's worried. He's uptight. He's angry.
You misrepresented that. We never said it was disinformation. We said it was Russian influence operations, which is what they do. There's a big difference between influence operations. No, you don't know that. Yes, Comey knew. Comey knew. The literature said it had all marks.
And then this guy saying Comey knew, but Comey knew about it. He knew that the laptop was real. And Brennan, gets in the guy's face and literally touches him. Is that assault? It was pretty angry, pretty aggressive. So the deep state is on their heels, is what I'm saying. Now, hopefully we finally get some accountability and justice. It does take time, but this bombshell with Comey is the biggest one so far that's finally out in the open. So stay tuned, my friends. Get your popcorn. Get your popcorn. Hey, by the way, give us a thumbs up and share this live. Please do it right now. That would be a big help. Keep your comments coming in the chat. Thank you, Lori, for sharing the stream on X. Much appreciated. And thank you, David Sling, on Rumble for reposting the stream. Let's see more of you do the same. Please do. Let's see here. David Sling says Ike was all over this after the election interference over and over. They broke the law after law. As was said, if you let this go, we will never have a legitimate election again. You must hold people accountable or it will happen. It will happen again and again. It's not retribution. It's not some political vendetta. This is about what's right and wrong. This is about law and order, accountability, and ensuring fair elections in the future, trust in the future. You don't go after, if it doesn't happen now, it will never, ever, ever happen. It'll just continue to happen. As far as the interference and the politicization, that's always a hard word, the weaponization of our government and intelligence communities. And so, James Comey, I hope you're listening to a lot of Taylor Swift right now. You're going to need it. Something to comfort you, when you're, sipping your Chardonnay on your beanbag or whatever the heck it is you do at home. Because where you're going, I don't know that they have bean bags. Maybe they do in prison. I don't know. Does James Comey get prison? I hope he does. I hope he does. Because, this is a guy that not only engaged in this despicable behavior, the whole time he was like, what did I do? Like the whole time he tried to manage his brand. Like that just makes it even more detestable because it's like you knowingly were engaged in this and the whole entire time you tried to come off as the guy who is just trying to be, operate with integrity and you were just, so grieved at how terrible Trump was and you just love this country so much and you were just trying to do what's right. That's all bullcrap. He basically coordinated this perception, this PR campaign for himself throughout, the years since. And it's just like, you can't claim, oh, well, this is what I was doing. Oh, maybe I had some missteps. No, he knew what he was doing. And then he went out in public trying to play the victim. Thank you to Bree and Matt and Ricky for reposting the stream. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much for doing that. All right. So we look over to, let's see, where are we looking at right now? We're going to look at New Jersey. Bomb threats received in 7 different New Jersey counties, all Republican favoring counties, mind you. Now we've been told there's no actual threat, but that didn't stop these people from trying to sabotage the voter turnout in the Republican areas of New Jersey.
Governor Mark Meredith is live in Montclair with the latest for us. Mark.
Ainsley, Brian, and Lawrence, good morning once again, friends. Some brand new information coming into our newsroom that we've learned that these threats were communicated electronically via email to at least 7 different counties across the Garden State. These threats certainly being taken seriously, and out of abundance of caution, some of the polling places were temporarily either closed or suspended as they moved voters to different locations. And then as they were doing those searches, then either able to reopen some of the facilities. We got a statement from the Attorney General of New Jersey. I want to put it up on the screen for you. It says, law enforcement officers have responded at each affected polling place. Some of these polling locations have already reopened to the public. The polls in New Jersey opened at 6 a.m. sharp. We have not seen any added security in the last hour or so, but it is certainly possible that we could see more because at this polling facility right here behind me, we are going to be seeing the Democratic nominee for governor, Mikey Sherrill. She'll be out here with her family.
All right. So we also told you earlier, in case you're just joining us, Scott Pressler, the big voter turnout guy, super long hair, very effeminate dude. He says that they ran out of provisional ballots in Chester County, Pennsylvania, where they're having a big Supreme Court judge for the state of Pennsylvania election today. And he's saying it's an absolute disaster. So here we go again. Scott Pressler also reported that 3 districts in New Jersey is where voting machines were down. And so they've got their legal folks on it. But again, we're seeing the same type of shenanigans. You're not seeing a whole lot of reporting going on about it, but it is happening. We will see what happens. I mean, so you got this race in Virginia, right, that everybody's been talking about. You've got the governor and lieutenant governor, the attorney general. What's crazy is you've got, Winsome Earl Sears running for governor there against this, what's her face, Spanberger, who had a horrible debate. She wouldn't condemn Jay Jones, the guy who's running for attorney general, the Democrat who advocated for killing a guy in the Virginia House a few years ago. Not only him, but his children. No Democrats called for that guy to drop out, by the way. We condemn the remarks, but go ahead and vote for him. I mean, yeah. And so Spanberger, basically said nothing. She's likely going to win. Virginia's tough. Typically, anytime there's a Republican president, they elect a Democrat governor and vice versa. President Trump did not endorse Winsome Sears. He did endorse Chitterella in New Jersey running for governor. I don't know what the dynamics are of that, but if Jay Jones wins as attorney general in Virginia, that shows you that things are probably far worse than we thought. If the people of Virginia are willing to elect this crazy person as the attorney general, we'll see. If I had to bet, I don't think he's going to win. I think Spanberger does win as governor. New Jersey's race, though, it's so close. I really don't know. I don't know the inner workings of New Jersey governor races. I think they're hard to predict historically because of the makeup there. But I would certainly give Chitterella a better chance of winning New Jersey than I would Winsome Sears of winning Virginia. But as we look at New York, everybody's talking about the mayoral race. I was on Newsmax earlier this morning and I said, can we just, take a step back? And it's still ridiculous to me that Cuomo has gotten back in, to a possibility here. Because, it's just so weird. You would have thought that guy's career was politically dead. But he is being looked at as a better option than Mamdani, understandably so, which is, it's still also bizarro world to me. But what we're seeing in New York is Mamdani has the young vote. He's young, he's cool, he is very well spoken, very good on his feet. He reminds me a little bit of like a Vivek Ramaswamy, not near as smart, but as far as his quick responses, it's a gift. And so it's no surprise that the younger voters are deceived by that. But then you also have 62% of the foreign-born vote going to Mamdani. So you have the young people and the foreigners. So basically what you're going to win on is ignorance and un-American motivations. Ignorance and un-American motives. That's how Mamdani's going to win. And I think he's going to win. You're seeing some of the polling and some of the betting markets showing, Cuomo closing the gap. I don't think it's going to happen because there are too many dumb, young, stupid people and too many foreigners in New York City. And you want to ask them, you're going to vote for communism. Like, where has that worked? What's your favorite communist country? You've seen some of that on social media. Is it Cuba, Venezuela, the Soviet Union? I mean, what's your favorite one? What example of successful communist governments are you referencing when you think about why you want to vote for Mamdani? Right? I mean, what reasoning do you have except for the guy says we get a bunch of free stuff? Now, you can say, all right, well, younger people aren't, they're just not able to get ahead, which, by the way, when you look at the lifestyles that we have now compared to 40 years ago, we have much bigger houses, much nicer cars. I mean, the standard of what's normal has kind of gotten out of control. I mean, if people would go back to, spending less on some of this stuff, and you look at the income change, I mean, John Stossel did a really great report on this. It's actually, there shouldn't be this disparity for young people. But the young people's standard of what's living is way beyond maybe our parents or grandparents had. And so that aside, we can talk about, the income disparities for young people. But the answer, my friends, is not entitlement. It's not entitlement. It's not sowing seeds of envy. It's empowerment. That is the message that we truly should be preaching to young people. The dignity of work and prosperity that follows. It's not a guarantee for everybody, but you're not going to be successful without hard work. It just doesn't happen unless you're gifted something, which is very rare. We should be inspiring instead self-reliance and grit to succeed, not entitlement and envy. Those are American values: self-reliance, grit, hard work. That's the winning ticket. But instead, you have a gifted politician out there telling people that they're owed things and they need to get this free and that free. And, even though the top 1% are paying the vast majority of the taxes in New York City, let's tax them even further. Rather than saying it's time to look in the mirror and we need to, get things in order here in New York City from a law and order standpoint and others, and promote ways of self-reliance and determination. That's what we should be doing, but that's not a winning message for entitled little brats or foreign-born people that think capitalism is the enemy and they want to take over our country. Unfortunately, that's the reality, I think, in New York City. He reminds me a lot of Obama. Articulate, young, hip, and telling people that they're owed a bunch of stuff. What a cancer it is. How'd that work out for us? Mamdani's even worse. Good luck, New York City. It's literally like we're watching New York City slit its own wrists in front of us. And I would ask, Mamdani is a guy who's wanting to globalize the intifada, whatever it is, globalize the intifada, intifada. I can never say this word. Now I got to look it up. Basically, you want this intifada, right? A term used to describe significant Palestinian uprisings against the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Basically, he wants to globalize that and fight back against Jewish people. He has said that. Where are all the Jewish voters in New York City? You've got to reject this. But that aside, he's also advocated for defunding police. He's basically wants to put criminals back on the streets, and that violence is a social construct. It's not a real thing. I mean, and on and on and on. But none of that garbage matters if you tell people that you're going to give them free stuff. I mean, think about what that says about our society. Our society is envious. Our society is materialistic. Our society, is mad at people for their success, and they're entitled. I mean, to me, it is you can talk about the politics of the thing, but when that kind of platform appeals to people in mass, boy, we have a people problem. A people problem, and it's nasty. So I think New York City it's a lost cause. I mean, it's totally bonkers to say, oh, hopefully Cuomo gets elected so New York City, will be okay. The guy who has a horrible track record, horrible dude. A lot of people died during COVID because of this guy. Revisionist history. They pushed him out of the governorship for his inappropriate behavior. And here we are going, hopefully he gets elected. I mean, I just think it's nuts. Sliwa has no chance. Honestly, that guy should have dropped out. If you really want to know, he had no chance. And I think there's some weird things about this guy and some of the reasons he's staying in and some of the things he was saying. He's almost like a meme. He's a radio guy. No offense. None taken. And it's almost like he's performing. And there's been some allegations that he stayed in the race because his campaign funds have been able to pay for things that he's enjoyed. I don't know if that's true. Those are allegations that are out there, but he should have dropped out. He really should have. Again, I hate to say it, but at least Cuomo is the devil you know. Which I really kind of hate that saying when it comes to voting and politics, but it's true in this case. And so people say, well, what does New York City have to do with anything? Well, New York City certainly influences the rest of the country in certain ways. It certainly influences the region with tourism and things like that. And then you think about the companies that are based in New York City. What incentive would they have to stay there when they know their taxes are going up? So, it's been joked that Mamdani is, the most successful realtor for states like Florida and Texas because companies are going to flee and go to places that are more business friendly. So it's certainly going to have implications. It will be, politically speaking, a really good enemy for Trump to have to, contrast against his policies versus his own. So that's, you're going to see a lot of that, in the coming years. But let me just take a step completely back. When it comes to tonight's election, Democrats are supposed to win. I mean, that's the normal thing. When you look at New Jersey, New York City, Virginia, Democrats are supposed to win. Anything but that happening is a huge victory for Republicans. But I promise you, tomorrow, assuming the Democrats take most of these positions, you're just going to hear mass media repetition that this is a referendum on Donald Trump. That's what you're going to hear. And if a Republican pulls something out that wasn't expected, well, that's an outlier. But let me tell you, if Chitterella wins New Jersey, that is a huge indication for the Trump policies being popular. But again, we look at where these, elections are being held, and the likelihood of Republicans taking them is very, very slim to none. And so to me, it's business as usual if Democrats win all of these races. Okay, yeah, that's totally predictable. That's, the trend we've seen for a long time in those places. You could argue in Virginia, it's gone a little more red at times, but not when a Republican president's in, typically. So they're going to spin it. That's what you're going to see nonstop tomorrow. Don't let it throw you off. But that's what they're going to do. So don't let it catch you off guard. Okay. Let's see here. Let's see. Castrano on LinkedIn says if Mamdani wins, it will be replicated across the country. No question. I don't know if I agree with that. What works in New York City is not something that plays as well in most places. Now, cities, if you're talking about liberal cities, which most of them are, that is a possibility for sure. Gastano also saying anyone can be successful in America. It's mindset that stops the majority from succeeding. No, that couldn't be any more right. That is absolutely correct. Bree says that on Rumble, not sure if this is accurate, but I have heard that Mamdani is not popular in New York, but is popular in a lot of other states around the country. I haven't checked to see where his donations are coming from, but I've certainly seen reports that they are not coming from individuals inside of New York City. Gastano also saying that Cuomo can still pull it off. It's possible. I mean, think about all the publicity this guy's had, Mamdani, because he's so radical. I mean, did you know who this guy was 6 months ago? I sure didn't, but it's like, he's been talked about nonstop. Bree says, I still think Mamdani will win, but I find that very interesting. Let's see here. David Sling says, if the shutdown continues, New York is going into the restroom for heat and water, also close to the dumpsters. Here's what's interesting about this shutdown is you just need one catastrophe to happen and all hell is going to break loose. You have one big air traffic incident, some security breach, something like that. And let me tell you, it is going to get very, very rough. They're really, really playing with fire here. So something, not that I love a bunch of government spending, and mostly we haven't been affected. But when it comes to air traffic and all that, and especially getting into the more busy holiday season, I mean, it is going to get more and more difficult. Okay, so that being said, let's pivot now over to The View. Why don't we? The View's Whoopi Goldberg rips up a note handed to her by Sonny. Apparently, she had made a joke in a previous segment regarding the auto pen. Take a look.
The Trump family has made about $1.8 billion profited off of this government. And he said that Joe Biden didn't know who he was pardoning using an auto pen. How come he don't know who this guy is?
Because he used an auto pen. Meetings with the judge, the meetings that they're supposed to go to when they're listening to what the hell, what?
I love when Sonny passes notes.
We don't know if Trump used an auto pen to part. It was a joke.
Yes. We don't know if Trump used an auto pen.
Oh, come on. No,
but we do know that he didn't know who that crypto guy was.
Well, I'm sorry. You know, the hardest thing about this job now is no one understands nuance. You know when you hear a joke, when somebody's fooling around, when they're not saying something specific, especially on this show. I'm very specific when I'm pointing stuff out. When I'm making jokes, you know when I'm making jokes. This is ridiculous. Anywho, the other thing that really upsets me about all of this.
All right, so it's interesting. Sonny says that the Trump administration has made $1.8 billion off this government. That is some kind of BS lie that's floating around. I mean, you start looking at some of the net worth, and Truth Social took a hit. A lot of net worth went down. I mean, I did an analysis on this a few weeks ago. Now, whatever's happening with crypto, I mean, Trump was working on that before he was president. He's become very aware of the unneeded burdens on crypto and some of the ridiculous rules that they had in place. And so he just righted the wrongs out there, but they're trying to imply that, Trump is in there just making a bunch of money off of everything he's doing. That's just not true. His net worth has not increased. And remember, last time his net worth went down, like he's serving the country at his own personal expense. So let's set that record straight. But Whoopi was making a joke about, this pardon for this crypto guy that he was asked about on 60 Minutes on Sunday, which, by the way, what a sham. I mean, we knew it would be, but I mean, President Trump talked to 60 Minutes for 73 minutes. They condensed it down to 27. There's going to be editing, but they were very selective in what they did. They didn't let him, expound in certain situations, which painted him poorly. They also had the camera extremely zoomed in on him. And I believe they must have had the shutter open because his face looked shiny. I mean, did someone not think to powder the guy's nose? Or maybe it was, and because the shutter settings were like that. I mean, they wanted to make him look bad. When you look at Norah O'Donnell, the camera's pulled back. Totally different look. So everything about it, the optics and everything they were trying to do was trying to smear Trump. But Trump handled it well. Now, during that question about the pardon, it didn't look great. He said, I don't even know who that guy is. Okay, that's been clarified by Caroline Leavitt earlier today in the press briefing, where she said, of course, President Trump knows about the guy's case. We have a legal team and another team that work on these, and they were very thorough on this. What he was saying is he didn't know him personally. But they jump cut the thing around it and made it look like he didn't know what he was talking about. Okay? And so that's the deal there. Now, when you look at the situation here with The View and what Whoopi is talking about, she gets all upset. I can't even make a joke. Now, I will give her that. Like, we are in a situation now where you can't hardly make jokes these days, but she would have justification maybe in her frustration if ABC and specifically The View wasn't guilty of saying all kind of BS over and over and over, which is why they have to issue those corrections all the time, because their legal team's like, you can't do this. And people say, well, Nancy Pelosi says that President Trump is chilling the media. You can't go on media and spread lies when you have a commercial broadcast license like ABC does. If these things were being said on a cable news network, they're not regulated by the FCC. They don't have a commercial broadcast license to broadcast all over the country on free airwaves. They have a distribution, mechanism and network that basically the government sanctions. And so you have a responsibility to broadcast in the public interest. That is the difference between an ABC, NBC, Fox, not Fox News, but Fox Network, CBS. They are have commercial broadcast license. They are broadcasting. Now, every one of their affiliates, these ABC affiliates, NBC affiliates across the country, they have compliance they have to adhere to. They have to be broadcasting things in the public interest. When you are presenting lies and you are selectively editing interviews to make a candidate look better and say something different than what she said, you are violating the public interest. And ABC has a history of it. Even George Stephanopoulos, who went on air and said that Donald Trump had been convicted of rape. Flat out lie. He was not convicted of rape. He said it multiple times, which is why they had to settle and pay $16 million. This isn't because Donald Trump is chilling the media. It's because the media, under these special provisions of commercial broadcast licenses, are lying. And so while I sympathize with Whoopi Goldberg that people don't have a sense of humor, you have a history at ABC and The View where you have violated the public interest again and again and again. You are on public airwaves. You have a responsibility legally to non-biased content. And, oh, by the way, it's probably not helping you, The View, that you pretend to be a news show in the middle of all this. You should present yourself more as a satire operation, if you ask me. But anyway, that's what happened on The View. Marjorie Taylor Greene also went on The View. She has come out against, the stopping of the Obama subsidies, the stopping of the stopping. So here's what you got as far as this shutdown goes. You've got bloated COVID level spending that the Democrats and many of these special interest groups and insurance companies and medical care, they don't want to shrink back to pre-COVID. Also, you have the Obamacare subsidies that are expiring at the end of this year. Okay, Republicans didn't do that. But that is one of, and the primary reason, and a lot of these subsidies are going to the various states, especially blue states, where they are dispersing reimbursements to illegal immigrants. It's absolutely happening unequivocally. There's no question, even though the Democrats lie and tell you it's not happening. So these subsidies expire. It doesn't mean, that's at the end of the year. So this shutdown right now, they're holding everything hostage because they want to negotiate now for what's expiring at the end of the year. This is day 35. They've had 35 days and then some to negotiate this ahead of time. But let's just say they passed the CR, the continued resolution, to keep funding government at current levels. They've wasted 35 days of negotiation time. So let's say the government opens next week. We are right back at this argument and stalemate for a shutdown and the subsidies going away at the end of the year. We're right back there. It's going to be Groundhog Day. And, the big reason they probably were trying to get this done back in October or end of September is because they didn't want to miss Christmas. And that very well may be the case now. So my point is, they could have voted for the continued resolution and used all this time to figure out these subsidies, but they didn't. Instead, they've held everything hostage. And they want to make it about the, Obamacare subsidies. If they really cared about that, they wouldn't have wasted all this time. They would have kept the government open and figured it out and then said, okay, well, hopefully we don't have a shutdown at the end of the year. If you wanted to just really negotiate tough, then you would do so at that time. But again, they don't care about the American people. But I will say this about Marjorie Taylor Greene. She wants those subsidies to continue. Now, it doesn't mean she wants them to go to illegal immigrants. course, she's also been very critical that the Epstein files haven't been released. So Marjorie Taylor Greene has been sort of at odds or going against some of what Trump has been trying to do and MAGA. And it's kind of interesting that she goes on The View. Take a look.
I think there's a lot of paid social media influencers. And I found it very interesting that they were the MAGA accounts, but they're all paid. And they all attacked me when I announced I was coming to join you ladies on The View. And I think that's very weak and pathetic. But when I talk about weak Republican men, I'm pretty much talking oftentimes about the leadership in the House and the Senate. And they're not getting our agenda done.
Okay, I guess it was a man-bashing session as well. I don't fault her for going on The View. I really don't care. I mean, I think it's, if you want to try to sway minds, and it's very hard to do, people are so dug in. I mean, you have no chance if you don't at least get in front of the people that disagree with you to state your case. And so I don't begrudge that. I don't think that's a bad strategy. But she says a bunch of paid influencers on the right went after her. And there are plenty of paid influencers that are out there doing stuff on both sides, and I can appreciate Marjorie Taylor Greene in a lot of ways. She has a lot of courage, but sometimes she just gets crazy about it. And she does. And so it's interesting that she is, sort of at odds or is being so critical of President Trump. And, she, obviously is critical of the leadership in both sides, both chambers. I don't know her angle here, what she's trying to do, but she's talked about her own kids and healthcare and how, at the end of the year, they're going to be without healthcare. Again, all of this stuff could be avoided. You could talk about a way to figure that out if you, voted for a continued resolution in the Senate and had all this time to figure it out. But again, no. Now, if you want to look to who's really responsible for why these Obamacare subsidies are happening anyway and they're expiring, well, that's what was in Obamacare. Nancy Pelosi was a key part of that. She has announced that she will not seek re-election. My gosh. It's literally like you got this old dog that the farmer should have put down years ago, but couldn't do it. And she's well past her prime. She should have been gone a long time ago. But she was one of the key architects in Obamacare. And not only that, one could argue she violated the Constitution and how she went about that vote. Before I tell you that, let's see what she says about President Trump. This is what she recently said to CNN. Take a look.
He's just a vile creature. The worst thing on the face of.
He's a vile creature, the worst thing on earth.
He's just a vile creature, the worst thing on the face of the earth. But anyway.
You think he's the worst thing on the face of the earth?
I do, yeah, I do.
Why is that?
Because he's the president of the United States and he does not honor the Constitution of the United States. In fact, he's turned the Supreme Court into a rogue court. He's abolished the House of Representatives. He's killed. He's just a vile creature.
So he's violating the Constitution. He's the worst thing on earth. I mean, this is irresponsible rhetoric, by the way. If you're the worst thing on earth, shouldn't you be eliminated? You're telling me that Donald Trump is worse than murderers. He's worse than rapists. Donald Trump is worse than Kim Jong-un. He's worse than Hamas. He's worse than Al-Qaeda. He's worse than the DMV. He's worse than the flu. Really, that's what you're saying. I mean, this is totally irresponsible rhetoric, but it's also extremely hypocritical when you look at Nancy Pelosi's record when it comes to the Constitution. Remember, she tore up the State of the Union after President Trump delivered it in 2020. I mean, some have said, hey, that was an official document. You're not supposed to, that's in the Constitution. You're not supposed to destroy it. Now, then others say, well, it was a copy. But either way, when you talk about vile, how disrespectful she is for the office of president. But not only that, Nancy Dirty Nancy, Nasty Nancy. What does President Trump call her? What's his nickname for Nancy? Drop it in the chat if you can think of it. But Nancy obfuscated her congressional oversight responsibility for security on January 6th. Seems like a pretty basic violation of the Constitution. Oh, and by the way, when we're talking about Obamacare, the House had a version. It went to the Senate. It changed. She never put it up for a vote. She used this weird, deem and pass kind of maneuver. Some argued that it wasn't constitutional. And I go back to these Obamacare subsidies that are expiring at the end of the year. Look no further than Crazy Nancy. That's it. Crazy Nancy Pelosi. Because she rammed this thing through without another House vote. And this was Democrats that passed this turd of a bill. And now the whole country's paying for it. Not only has our, you want your doctor? You get to keep your doctor. Right, Michelle? That's right. It's a lie from Obama. It's been a disaster. And now these subsidies are expiring. And Nancy Pelosi is absolutely one of the key architects for this shutdown. Oh, and by the way, she's made an awful lot of money on insider trades, or at least her husband has, right? And you're going to say that President Trump is the most vile thing on earth? The worst thing possible. Worst thing possible. That's what she said. How is that not inciting violence? How is that not inciting political retribution, political targeting? I don't see how it can't be. Totally irresponsible. All right. If you like the show, heart the post on X and repost us right now. Make sure you're following me on X at Ike Wingate. If you're watching on Rumble, give us a thumbs up and repost it as well. And all the other platforms, give us a thumbs up, please, and share this live. It is greatly appreciated when you do so. All right. Let's see. Looking at the SNAP benefits. So a judge has ordered that President Trump has to fund SNAP and WIC, etc. This same judge donated $700,000 to Democrats. His name is Judge McConnell. He runs nonprofit Crossroads Rhode Island that's received $128 million in government funding, and he's the one who is demanding that President Trump fund these SNAP benefits. He also tried to block DOGE cuts. He's a Democrat activist judge, as C3 on X points out. And this is just par for the course, is it not? Again, with these activist judges over and over and over. Now, President Trump has tapped tariff revenue to help in the funding of things so far. But obviously, you don't want people to go hungry. But at what point, will Democrats truly feel the depth of what they're doing as it pertains to the cost to the American people? Caroline Leavitt stressed today that it is going to take time after this cutoff to get the funding dispersed, etc., to where people can eat. So we know that Trump has allegedly tapped into emergency funds. Some believe it is coming from tariffs. Obviously, Trump has worked to figure out ways to continue to pay our military as well. He's done everything I think he possibly can do. But he's said he's not going to be held hostage. He's not going to be extorted by Democrats in this process, which is, I think, a completely reasonable point of view. You want to negotiate? Then open the government up. We've lost all this negotiation time. Now, the whole SNAP issue is a whole other issue, right? We know there's tons of fraud, tons of people that aren't citizens on it. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so, that needs to be greatly reduced. Somebody really needs to do something about that. Now, you talk about the filibuster, okay? The filibuster basically creates this scenario where you have to have the 60 votes to pass this type of bill, right? That's the hang up. You eliminate the filibuster and you can use these procedural, I don't pretend to understand it all because it's complicated, but basically you eliminate the filibuster and you can pass legislation with 51 votes. And for the longest time, it's like, oh, Democrats want to eliminate the filibuster. We can't let that happen. They've tried. They've tried to eliminate the filibuster. It just hasn't happened yet. And the only reason why last time was Sinema and Manchin said no. They will try it again. And John Thune and others, we don't want to do that. We don't want to set that precedent. You don't have to set the precedent for Democrats to try to do it. They're going to do it. By the way, the filibuster isn't some sacred thing in the Constitution. Did you know that? I mean, the filibuster has been, let me see if I can find my, let's see, what did I do? Okay. So the Senate adopts rules based on unlimited debate, no prior question, motion to cut off. Okay, so there's no filibuster when our country's founded, by the way. And the first recognized filibuster was in 1837. Okay, so it wasn't like it was enshrined, in the Constitution. So it's been used and not used over the years. I mean, back in 2013, the Democrats eliminated the filibuster for most nominees, which they call that the nuclear option, right? And then in 2017, the Republicans extend the nuclear option to Supreme Court nominees. So it's been used by both sides on nominees. This is not in the Constitution. Article 1 gives the Senate power to make its own rules, but says nothing about supermajority for debate. So for 60 years, our country really didn't use filibusters. Check this out. In the civil rights era, Southern Democrats used record-long filibusters to block anti-lynching and civil rights bills. Strom Thurmond had a 24-hour, 18-minute speech. Again, this is a total lie that Democrats are for, equality and all that. They've used this to capture the African American community. It's the Republicans that ratified the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, eliminating slavery, granting the right to vote, etc. The Jim Crow laws were Democrats. Okay, so that's just a sidebar here. But then you even have the Democrats, setting filibuster records to try to, not eliminate anti-lynching. They wanted lynching to continue. They didn't want these civil rights bills to happen. But I go back and I digress. The filibuster is not some sacred thing. It's not in the Constitution. Okay, I get what we're talking about here. Well, you don't want to set the precedent. I'm just telling you, Democrats don't play by precedent rules. They don't. And so my suggestion would be right now, while you can, you eliminate the filibuster and you ram through the Trump agenda. Because they've already demonstrated they're not willing to act in good faith. They didn't, there wasn't one nominee that they allowed to happen without great resistance until they finally had to go around it and do these recess appointments. They've shown you they are not going to act in good faith. Why are you continuing to play by rules that they won't play by? We have a very small window here to get this stuff done. It is not something I would have advocated for in the past. We are in a different political climate now where we've seen what the Democrats are willing to do that was unprecedented with the weaponization of our DOJ and FBI and the lawfare against President Trump. Not to mention all the crazy crap in the 2020 election and on and on and on. So why are we doing the same thing and expecting a different result? We know that's insanity, right? And so I'm done with the defense of the filibuster because Democrats have already shown us if they have a window, if they have any opportunity to do it, they will eliminate it. And then you take that into account along with the fact that it is not something enshrined in the Constitution. It is something that's been used on and off, and it's for the Senate to decide the rules. They could always add it back. Let's say somehow Republicans are able to, in the midterms, continue and carry a Senate majority. They can add the filibuster rule back in for that session. They can always add it back and say, all right, we're willing to add it back and start from scratch here in good faith. But I say get rid of it because you're just going to have a bazillion problems from now until the midterms with getting stuff passed through the Senate. That's my spiel. There's another way you can do it as well. This was on the Dan Bongino show. Vince Cogliese, I don't know how to say his name, but this guest he has on, let me give her name, Rachel Bovard, spells out another way that you could get around this to keep the government open.
Okay, somebody please clip this. Somebody please clip the exchange we're having right now, because the president of the United States should be posting this to Truth Social. You don't have to change a thing right now, and a simple majority vote would force Democrats to have to speak to defend the position they've taken.
There are only three things that can ever happen on the Senate floor: a quorum call, a speech, and a vote. And if voting and quorum calls aren't taking place, speeches have to happen, or you can vote on the question, right? That is what the essence of a filibuster is. It's a delay. If 51 Republicans are present in the chamber and no Democrat is speaking, you can put the question.
So we could get the government open if 51 Republicans just show up on the Senate floor right now?
Yes, and they have to wait out the Democrats, right? It could take several days. If you were actually to play the scenario out, what I expect would happen is Democrats would send their young guns in, see Cory Booker do a 24-hour speech. Any of these other younger senators would come down and give long, long speeches. You would have to wait until these are done. They can't sustain it. So you have to wait them out. And as soon as they cannot speak any longer, you can put the question.
Want to see more? Make sure to check out.
Okay. So you got another way around it with these procedural rules if you're quick. Okay. Now, here's the sad reality of all of this is we've got Democrats blaming Republicans and vice versa. This is a political tool to get what you want. And so you could argue that Republicans don't want to bail Democrats out of this shutdown. They want the optics and the appearance of them acquiescing to do what is right. So there's certainly political theater going on both sides to this. What Republicans are asking for, though, is the reasonable thing. Just continue the government at current levels so we can negotiate, which is the way it's typically been done. This hasn't been an issue. But again, since Trump is in office, the Democrats are up to shenanigans, which again is another reason to eliminate the filibuster. Castano says you should eliminate it during shutdowns. David Sling says, isn't the filibuster known as the Mallard-Fillmore bill? It was used to change daylight saving time to reduce duck hunting season hours. Okay. Anything's possible. What I've asked Grok for is there was an accidental creation in 1806 when the Senate removed the previous question motion, which is what is used in the House to end debate, and it enabled endless talking accidentally in 1806. The term filibuster enters the use in 1837 for senators to delay a bill by speaking for hours. So 1837. Let's see. All right, so it was orchestrated by the Whig senators to block Jackson's Democratic allies from expunging a censure resolution against him from the Senate Journal. Okay, that's what it says. The first official use of the filibuster. So there you go. Gaetano. I'm sorry, Gaetano. It's hard for me to see the chat on this screen from LinkedIn. Anyway, going back to the main point is the filibuster is not sacred. Okay. Filibuster's not in the Constitution. All right, my friends, help us out. Heart the post and repost on X. Give us a thumbs up on whatever other platform you're watching on, and repost or share this live. If you'd like to support what we're doing and help us cover our costs, you can do so using Cash App or Venmo. You just go to IkeReport.com, Cash App or Venmo, IkeReport.com, if you'd like to contribute $5, $10, $20 to help us cover our costs. Okay, let's talk about this. This is so disappointing to me as it relates to those on the right. You have this so much infighting ever since October 7th. This Gaza, Palestine, Hamas versus Israel, and Jewish people debate has just gotten worse and worse and worse. Now, we talked about this a bit last week. Tucker Carlson had Nick Fuentes on his show, which I say you're free to have the dude on your show. Okay? But he didn't challenge him hardly at all. I listened to the whole thing because I wanted to make sure I was informed. He did push back on him a little bit, but he didn't ask him about any of his outrageous points of view about eliminating certain races, about saying Hitler was cool and Stalin is cool and women want to be raped. And I mean, this guy has crazy positions. Now, Nick Fuentes is smart, and I agree with him on certain things, but he is totally radical on the edges on other things. And I think he's a freaking piece of garbage. He's still made in God's image, but he is so distorted in his point of view. And people like him do irreparable damage to legitimate, good faith conservatives. Which is why I think Tucker Carlson for a while thought the guy was a Fed, because he absolutely has the markings of someone who's planted to justify the critique of the right. Because when they call the Republicans or conservatives Nazis and far right and racist and all that stuff, this guy comes along and basically, is a crazy outlier, but he corroborates all those things in his point of view. And by the way, shut the hell up talking about women and marriage and all this stuff. This dude has never been married. He has no idea what he's talking about. By the way, but Tucker has him on and doesn't ask him about any of that stuff, which is what has created outrage, because it seemed very friendly compared to how Tucker Carlson has treated other people, like, say, even Ted Cruz. Tucker was not contentious. He did not push back. He just didn't seem very curious. It seemed like two guys that were having a conversation that didn't want to go too deep or have some kind of disagreement. It was very courteous, hospitable. It didn't mean Tucker was over there agreeing with him, but it certainly lacked curiosity from Tucker's part, and it lacked integrity from the standpoint of asking him about all of these wild positions that he holds. So I believe he has invited criticism on himself. Now, I reject the idea of anybody who's critical of Israel is automatically an anti-Semite. I reject that idea. So, my problem with this whole debate is there are people on the extremes that are dominating the conversation. But I think there's somewhere in the middle you could be, as in, I don't want foreign aid going to Israel or any country. That's an America First policy. I understand that. But there are people that don't agree with that, and, they're automatically labeled Zionists. I've been called a Zionist many times by people in this camp. Why? Because I think Israel should be allowed to exist. That shouldn't be a radical position. But because the extremes have dominated the conversation, it's like you're either on one end of the spectrum or you're not. And if you're not on this end of the spectrum, you're on that end of the spectrum, and that's how you're going to be labeled. Now, for a while, Tucker has occupied, I would say, a pretty reasonable middle ground position on this stuff, as in he loves Jewish people, he loves the nation of Israel, but he doesn't necessarily love the government of Israel or sending a bunch of money over there that they, then do things with that he doesn't agree with. That's a reasonable, criticism, but you could do that about any country that we give money to, by the way. And that's my pushback on this. This is what really makes it look like anti-Semitism is there is inconsistent critique of money that goes to Israel that we don't have against other countries. And they say, well, it's because of the AIPAC lobby. China spends more money lobbying our country than Israel. So you're inconsistent in your criticism. What does that look like? Well, it seems like you are being especially critical of Israel. You're playing right into the anti-Semitism label. So again, if you're going to criticize this stuff, criticize it with equal time, equally around the globe on where we send funding. And that's not happening. And that, I think, is a major problem. But for a while, Tucker's kind of operated in that space, but then he's gone on to say, I despise Christian Zionists and all this and this and this and this. Now, he came out with an apology yesterday or day before, saying, I don't mean that. But again, people are getting so heated and crazy over this. Like, people are becoming obsessed about it. I'm tired of talking about it because I got to tell you, my friends, this is not the most and only issue that's happening in the world today, but you would be fooled if you ask a lot of people out there because this is all they want to talk about. I'm just tired of it. Great. You have your position. I have mine. They have their position. They have their position. Whatever. Move on. It's an obsession. And that's what is so different about this than other places. And that's what is so crazy to me and plays into, wait a minute, there's an unusual amount of focus on this subject, unlike any other. So it's like, why are you so focused on Israel compared to other places, which makes it look an awful lot like what they call it, anti-Semitism. I don't throw that around lightly. I don't like it when you disagree with somebody and you get labeled something like racist or trans phobe or xenophobe or what. I don't like those labels. But when you consistently over time don't apply the same criticisms to other countries that you do Israel, that's precisely what it appears to be, is anti-Semitism. And so it has occupied the conversation, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse since October 7th. And it's a fever pitch now. And I'm just telling you, I'm tired of hearing about it. And I'm tired of it being such an issue of life and death in America that people don't want to talk about anything else. They're just tunnel vision on this. And Nick Fuentes is like that. And Tucker Carlson has been like that to an extent. And he's gotten so drawn into it that everything is like Israel-colored glasses to him, it seems like. And then he's gotten emotional and says he despises Christian Zionists. Like, you guys have lost the plot here. You're taking it way too far. Now, on the other side of that, you should be able to be allowed to be critical of countries we are spending, and sending money to and what they're doing with it. That should be okay. That should be fair game. But I would say for those of you that are specifically singularly focused on Israel, then do it for all the countries. And be fair about the lobby argument that you make, because there are a lot of countries that lobby here, and a lot of them that aren't registered with FARA, even though AIPAC is registered with LARA. And why aren't you being critical of the Chinese lobby? I don't want to be at odds with any of these people. We can coexist, but talk about more than just that. And Candace Owens has gotten to the same thing where it's like everything's about that. Now, after the Charlie Kirk assassination, she's been distracted, but she, continually loops in things to blame Israel for. And again, I am not an apologist for Israel. I'm not an apologist for any government. I don't trust any government. Can we say that clear-eyed? Yes. I don't trust our own government. Every government does what is in their own best interest at the expense of other countries. Recently, with the exception of the U.S., but Donald Trump has changed that. That is what they do. Intelligence agencies, that is what they do. That doesn't mean I like it. That doesn't mean I dismiss it. That doesn't mean I advocate or approve of it. But I'm just being pragmatic and a realist. All the countries do it. You're mad at Israel because they're very effective at it? I feel like I have a very balanced point of view on this. But some people would call me a Christian Zionist. Some people would probably call me anti-Semitic. Great. I'm not either of those things. I support Israel's right to exist. They are there. I would desire that as many people come to know Jesus Christ as possible, no matter their ethnicity, no matter where they live, no matter what DNA they have. And I have a clear conscience about that position, and I don't want to continue talking about it over and over and over and over. I think this has become an obsession that is not healthy. And it is fracturing the right. I have been critical of Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin because they've gone, I would say, like over the top neocon about bombing Iran and some of these other things. Like they've gone very aggressive, and they've also been obsessed. I've been critical of people on both sides of this thing because I think neither of them are correct. I think I'm correct. Of course I do. But that being said, Ben Shapiro went out and did a whole monologue against this Tucker Fuentes interview, showing all these clips of Fuentes saying crazy things. And basically critiquing Tucker for the fact that, he just didn't ask him about any of it. So in this case, to me, Ben Shapiro's pretty reasonable. That doesn't mean he is all the time, but it's just become so emotional on either end of this thing, and it's fracturing the Republican Party. as I've said, I go around and I've talked to different people, and they want to talk about this. I honestly want to say, who gives a crap? I don't mean that flippantly. I do give a crap, but I'm saying, why are you so obsessed over this? Why is this the thing that you think affects your life in America today and tomorrow and a year from now? This issue is not that. It does not affect that. But yet that's the focus. And I'm just like, I'm so fatigued with it. And I'm very angry and upset that it has fractured the Republican Party like it has and continues to do so. It's very destructive. And I wish people would just come to a point where they go, all right, agree to disagree. Now, Nick Fuentes is a whole nother thing. Like, he does not belong in the Republican Party. He's cancerous. Yes, he has, free speech. He can say whatever he wants. But I don't want to be associated with a guy who goes around saying things like that. One, who has no real idea what he's talking about on a lot of these things. But two, has no perspective or perception of everyone is made in God's image. That doesn't mean you're afraid to call out certain behavior of certain groups or whatever. Fine. I'm not saying turn a blind eye to that. But his rhetoric is divisive. It's cancerous. It's dangerous. It's just gross. I asked my teenage son the other day, I'm like, have you watched any of this guy's videos? He's like, well, I've heard of him. I'm like, you're not allowed to watch his videos. Because I don't want my son growing up as this guy who thinks that women are objects that are purely here for his own enjoyment and service. And I understand the biblical model of marriage. I get it. But in a biblical model of marriage, you could say, women need to respect their husband. That's true. You also have to be a man worthy of respect. And I'm not saying this from a self-righteous standpoint because I get it wrong nearly every day. I'm still learning how to do it. It's an ongoing thing. But you can't expect a wife to submit to your leadership if you aren't being a leader. And it starts with the man. The man has to lead the way, loving his wife as Christ loved the church, loving his wife, serving her. That doesn't mean she controls you and tells you what to do, and vice versa. But when it comes to the ultimate decisions in the household, the man is supposed to make them. The man is the one that's going to be held accountable to God for his leadership. You may not like that. I didn't make up that scenario. God did. Take it up with him. But Nick Fuentes doesn't have that point of view. He doesn't understand what it's like to love your wife sacrificially, to serve her, and then you're worthy of respect. You don't just appear together and the woman owes you all this respect. You must earn it. I don't want my son subscribing to this mentality, or anybody's son that thinks the world belongs to me and everybody is to serve me. And, I'm going to rule with an iron fist. And that's basically the implications of what Fuentes advocates for. I think it's damaging. I think it's dangerous. And at the very least, it gives the left a ton of fodder and firepower and examples to say, see, they're Nazis. Now, it's not fair. It's not a fair broad brush stereotype classification of the right, but he doesn't help our defense of conservatism. So I've said a lot about it. I didn't mean to go off that long, but I feel like this is such a nuanced thing. It takes explanation, not just a 30-second soundbite. But what has happened is the Heritage Foundation, a great organization, came out and defended Tucker. It says, we're never going to cancel him. And I agree with that. But what they didn't do is they were not critical of the fact that Tucker Carlson let this white supremacist nut job go off for an hour and a half without really being challenged. And the fact that this guy is fueling a lot of the unnecessary anti-Semitism. I mean, that's what it is. The targeting of people based on race or ethnicity, etc., diminishing of women. They didn't critique him about that. They just said, we're not going to. Okay, well, great. You advocate for free speech. But did you have a problem with the way he did it, or are you okay with it? And again, all of these people can do whatever they want. Okay? But you're known by what you say and don't say. And so the Heritage Foundation has come under a bunch of critique for what they didn't say regarding what Tucker Carlson didn't say. So all of it's kind of a mess. And unfortunately, the Heritage Foundation, Tucker Carlson, people I've held in high regard are, in some ways letting us down or at least missing opportunities here. And it's just, I'm frustrated because we shouldn't be focused on any of this stuff. We should be focusing on things that are making a difference and advancing this conservative agenda that we have a short window to correct a lot of wrongs. But instead, what are we doing? We're talking about all this crap. I'm disappointed. I'm fatigued. And I'm saddened by it. Because we have a bunch of discord. We have a bunch of we have a lack of unity right now over this issue that should not be dividing us. Something has to be done and reset now. This needs to be put behind those on the right and come together on the things you agree with and leave that other stuff out, because it's not going to change your life tomorrow or the next day. And Fuentes, I would defend his right to say all those things, but I don't have to agree with them. And by no means is there any justification to eliminate a guy like that. But my concern is that something like that's going to happen to that guy. I don't know who would, whoever would do it. But if that happens, then you take Charlie Kirk's horrible assassination and magnify it times 10 as far as not positive effect, but damaging effect. The division that would ensue would be civil war status, I believe. And that's my concern, is this guy doesn't need to be given platforms that help boost him in any way. He can say whatever he wants, but he's not going to get help from anybody else to publicize it. Now you can say, well, you're talking about it right now. That's because I'm trying to make people aware of who this guy is if they don't know, and state the position of trying to be someone reasonable. Because I know there are a lot of young men that watch what this guy puts out there, and it fuels the worst parts about us. It fuels our diminishing of people because of where they were born or what they look like. It fuels that, unchecked hunger for power that we can have. It fuels the worst parts of us as men. It doesn't mean everything he says is complete, lies. I'm not saying that. And again, the guy is smart, so I'm not diminishing that. But I would say he's totally misguided or misdirected. And he's so young, he's in his 20s, that he probably, I don't know. He may not even realize just the damage he is doing. And we all have to be aware of what's being pushed out there to young men, because he is definitely influencing. And this is not the kind of influence we want to see in the conservative movement for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. We don't want that. Because all you're doing is weakening the conservative argument because you are tainting it with poison. All right, I'm done talking about it. All right, let's talk about some trans things. How about that? Woo! Okay. All right. If you want to support what we're doing, Cash App or Venmo at IkeReport.com, IkeReport.com, or in the chat on Rumble. Give us a thumbs up if you like the broadcast and repost us. Give us a heart if you're watching on X and repost there. Let's see. David Singh says, Ike sure isn't a social democrat, whatever that is. Both parties are willing to use it for power. Many Republicans went warpath when they lost USAID. Gutano, I hope I got that right, says dozens of Muslim countries get our money, dozens of Christian countries get our money, but the Jews can't have it. It's bizarre. Okay, not money. Muslims have countries, Christians have countries, but the Jews can't have a country. That's what Gutano's saying. David Sling says so many of these influencers out there are paid to say what they say. Conversely, some people are paid not to challenge them, perhaps. I would say that's true. There's parameters. You're not allowed to say that. All right, let's talk about this trans situation at the Gold's Gym. It's a Gold's Gym in L.A. Gavin Newsom. Yeah, that's what I call him, Newsom. He's wrecking California. He's doing it. He's doing it in such a terrible way. It's a bigly mess. Okay? We got to get Newsom out of there. He's wrecking it. It's a beautiful place. We got a Gold's Gym. We got a tranny up in there. All right, I digress. So this dude who looks like a lady was up in the women's locker room. The gal on the right, her hair's pulled back. She's very strong looking. She had enough. This is laced with profanity. I won't play the whole thing, but she finally had enough when she saw this dude in her locker room.
Men, grown men with big dicks in the women's locker room. And that's why I'm getting kicked out. And I want to make sure the girls know.
Okay, so there we go. I mean, it wasn't as bad as it could be, but she goes off for a while. She got kicked out of Gold's Gym because she complained that this lady boy was in there. And this is this is
across America. We're like trans women are going into the women's locker room and not really caring about how women feel about it. And it's really hurtful, yo. Like, how you gonna say you want to be a woman or that you are a woman, but you don't give a fuck how women...
Okay. All right. So I'm not going to give a ton of audience there to that because it's a lot. But this is the guy. It's not funny because it's actually a gross violation of personal space and rights and safety. Nobody should have to deal with that. But I'm laughing at the fact that this guy walks around in whatever that is. Is that a tube top? I don't know, the crop top. I don't know what the names are. But walking around with these big guns pretending to be a girl and is in the locker room. So finally this lady had enough. She went viral. Everyone's offering her, gym memberships elsewhere. But more women, if more men would have stood up to this years ago, women wouldn't have to be. But certainly the seal is broken when it comes to people pushing back on this because it is absolute lunacy. And so women, don't be afraid to speak out against it. But men, if your ladies are having to go to gyms where this is happening, you need to get up off your butt and go do something about it. Because if people would push back against this, it would never be accepted as normal. It would be accepted as what it is, and it's freaking nuts. So it's time. Unfortunately, this lady had to do it. Literally, it's like, am I the only one making sense? Is how she felt. So just, I'm telling you, it's just going to get worse and worse if people don't stand up. All right, let's talk a little bit about Kash Patel. He's come under scrutiny on this ISIS plot that was foiled last week. Some people are saying it was, basically a trap. It was entrapment, that these guys were never going to do anything had the FBI not come in and done it. I don't know if that's true. There's been allegations. Now we're getting some more information. Pam Bondi says a newly unsealed complaint reveals a major ISIS-linked terror plot with multiple subjects arrested in the Eastern District of Michigan targeting the United States. According to the complaint, subjects had multiple AR-15 rifles, tactical gear, and a detailed plan to carry out an attack on American soil. Okay. More than 1,600 rounds were found. Apparently, they were going to target gay clubs, gay bars, something to that effect. Kash Patel put this out. I'm proud of the work of the FBI, taking violent criminals off the streets. Let me be clear. We will not be distracted by baseless rumors or the noise from uninformed internet anarchists and the fake news. So I believe he's addressing this allegation that this was sort of an extortion plot. He says, I've always said, criticize me all you want, but going after the people doing great work, my personal life or those around me is a total disgrace. The disgustingly baseless attacks against Alexis. So some people have criticized him. This is his personal account. This is not his FBI account. But they say, why is he posting about his girlfriend? They think that's out of bounds, I guess. I don't know. People have been attacking his girlfriend, Alexis, a true patriot, and the woman I'm proud to call my partner in life. These people are beyond pathetic. She's a rock-solid conservative and a country music sensation who has done more for this nation than most will in 10 lifetimes. I'm blessed she's in my life. Attacking her is wrong, cowardly, jeopardizes safety. My love of family will always be my cornerstone. And he says, and to our supposed allies staying silent, your silence is louder than the clickbait haters. So I don't know who he is talking about as far as silence goes. I wondered, is that why Pam Bondi sent out that post to say, okay, no, this was a legit terrorist plot that was foiled? I'm not quite sure. Other people say the reason people are being critical of him is the fact that he is flying on a government private jet to go to his girlfriend's concerts. Now, there are other people that are alleging his girlfriend is an agent of Mossad. You see how it always comes back to Israel? Not me saying that. I'm saying that's always the place that people go. The girl has never even been in Israel. She lived in Europe for a time. She's not Jewish. She worked at PragerU, Dennis Prager's organization, who happens to be Jewish, but he puts out a ton of American content. And people go, well, that's, PragerU is a Mossad operation. I mean, my gosh. Does Mossad have no limitations resource-wise? I guess they're in everything. But there's been allegations that his girlfriend is a Mossad agent in a honeypot scheme to influence the FBI director. That's what they're saying. I guess because she worked at PragerU. Okay. I've been interviewed by PragerU, actually, for a fundraising position. This was like 5 years ago. Anyway, So I don't know exactly what criticism. Maybe it's all of the above. But you go back to him flying on private jets, and I did a little bit of research on this, okay? And he is, in fact, flying on government private jets to personal things. That doesn't sit well, does it? However, he has to. It's a requirement for the FBI director to fly privately for security reasons. This has been in place since 2011. It's not something that was put in place by this administration, but it is a safety requirement. Okay? And you can ask Grok, you can ask other AI, but here is the actual policy on the Department of Justice executive's use of aircraft for non-mission purposes. And you go, well, that's not fair. He just gets a private jet wherever he goes on the taxpayer dime. Well, no. He flies on the private jet for safety, but he is required to reimburse the government for the cost. Okay? So this is the norm. This is not something new. Now, I will say this. Kash Patel criticized Chris Wray for flying on a private jet. Well, either Kash Patel didn't know this was a requirement or he did, and he was just trying to throw drama that way. I don't know, which makes him look bad. It does make him look like a hypocrite, but my guess is maybe he didn't know. And whoever, he's went on shows saying it, nobody pushed back. I'm not saying Kash Patel is perfect. He's said and done things that I'm just like, what are you doing? I've thought there are times where the job might be too big for him. Time will tell. We'll see. I'll tell you one thing. I thought the SecDef job was going to be too big for Pete Hegseth, and I couldn't have been more wrong. Doesn't seem like he's having a problem with it. But anyway, back to this whole critique on the jets. It is something he's required to do. I wish I was required to only fly on private jets. I guess I need to get a job as the director of the FBI. Let's see. All right, let me get some of your chat. Bree says, I agree. The men have to stand up against this trans stuff. 100%. Bree says, how do you feel about Pam Bondi? I am not a fan. Yeah, she's probably my least favorite in the group. President Trump says she's doing an amazing job, and I'm sure he gets privy a lot more to the job she's actually doing. I would just say she is not a great communicator. And you might go, well, that's fine because, what she's really supposed to be doing is upholding the law and prosecuting. Okay, but yeah, part of that's communication. And when you're the attorney general, a lot of times you're in more of a communication job than you are, in a courtroom, right? And so I think she's missed the mark on some opportunities to communicate effectively and correctly. And so I think I'll just leave it at that. Let's see. David Sling says these people that were caught had a device to convert the weapon into a machine gun. Yeah. It was one of those. I don't know if it was a bump stock. I don't remember. But yeah, it was something to create more automatic fire. Let's see. Bree says horrible communicator. LOL. All right. Let's see. Remember to like the post, like this broadcast, and repost. And if you want to help us out, Cash App or Venmo, IkeReport.com, $5, $10, $20 to help us cover our cost, IkeReport.com. We plan to be back on Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Central. More things to get to here. We are going on nearly 2 hours, no breaks, giving you nothing but the goods, my friends. Here's the next story. The BBC exposed for doctoring President Trump's January 6th speech to make it seem like he endorsed rioting per whistleblower. It's doctored to say, we're going to walk to the Capitol and fight like hell. The original clip, he said, we're going to walk to the Capitol and cheer on congressmen and women. Remember, he also said, we are going to peacefully and patriotically let our voices be heard. You remember that? Well, that didn't make it in the BBC version.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell.
Huh. That's not the order in which he said it. Not the order in which he said it.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Oh, we're going to walk down there and fight. We're going to fight like hell. Oh, also, we're going to cheer on our congressmen. So, selective editing going on at the BBC. It's been found out from the BBC per a whistleblower. They didn't even have the portion in there of peacefully and patriotically let our voices be heard. But that's what he said. Our own media, eliminated and skipped over that part, didn't they? They omitted it. David Sling says, that sounds like a lawsuit. Can we do that? I'm sure it could be done. But I don't know. I'm not a legal expert. All right. Let's see. Damian Fielder is putting out this video about another No Kings Day 3.0. This time they're calling it a mass blackout from November 25th to December 2nd. They're calling on liberals to not go to work, not spend any money, and not go to restaurants. You just want to crash the economy, I guess. Apparently, that'll be a good time to go shopping because no liberals will be out to be in your way, I guess. I don't know. But let's see what Damian Fielder has to say about this No Kings Day 3.0.
Another liberal protest is coming up, and it is guaranteed to fail. Let me tell you why. So you're going to hear about a mass blackout. They're going to be trying to shut down the entire system by not going to restaurants and not shopping, so on and so forth, from November 25th to December 2nd. Funny part is they had to say no restaurants twice. I wonder why, but I digress. The reason I know this is not going to work is because your average leftist has the attention span of a fruit fly. They can barely keep their dates straight. Okay, when's No Kings 1? When's No Kings 2? When's No Kings 3? What's the mass blackout? All they know how to do is be anti-Trump. So they're going to try to continue to whip up these events to try to have something to look forward to on their social calendar because all they can do is stand against him. So what you're going to see is individuals are going to hype this up, right? And they're going to say, oh, this is going to be the biggest protest ever. And nothing material is going to develop from this. They seem to act like they all hold the purse strings to the economy when they are the first ones who are typically looking for a handout instead of trying to be productive in the economy themselves. So what do you think is going to happen? So just so you know, when you see people start to talk about this mass blackout, November 25th to December 2nd, it's not going to work, just like everything else they always are coming up with. So if you didn't know before, now you know.
All right. November 25th to December 2nd, potentially this blackout that they are going to do. Dick Cheney passed away last night, age of 84. And I was asked about this morning. The news broke. I was on 6 a.m. my time on Newsmax. The news broke. I found out 5 minutes before I went on, so I was trying to scramble to, just get some details without just saying, that guy sucks. But the guy did serve the country. You might not have liked the way he served it, but he did, basically his entire life. So I think that still deserves a level of honor and respect. Although as the day has gone on, I've remembered and seen more and more stuff that he did and have been therefore like, oh man, he really did represent the establishment in all sense of the word. But the guy did have a pretty incredible life as far as, how he got into politics and how he, at 34 was the chief of staff. I mean, the guy was in a ton of stuff, and he, Rumsfeld is the guy who sort of brought him in. There's a biopic out there about this dude, which is it's actually really a pretty good flick. But in his latter years, especially, man, I mean, this guy was fiercely anti-Trump, and it's just, I didn't agree with him on a lot of things, but you don't speak ill of the dead, I guess, right? So, still condolences to his family. But Dick Cheney is dead. He had 5 heart attacks. He had a heart replacement surgery 12 years ago. He quit smoking like 50 years ago and credited that for being able to stay alive. But man, he endorsed Kamala Harris. You remember that? So did his daughter. That to me, I'm like, well, that's bad. That's bad. When you hate Donald Trump that bad, you're willing to endorse a crazy lunatic liberal when you've got a good option. Anyway, David Sling says a blackout for No King's Day 3.0 sounds racist. Why can't they make it a rainbow out? That's what they should have done for sure. All right, so you got these races going on. I'll be watching them. I am not going to go live tonight for live results for this. I'll be tweeting about it probably. So check me out on X at Ike Wingate. Jay Jones, if this guy wins for Attorney General in Virginia, boy, things are worse than we thought. The text messages this guy sent wanting to kill a fellow member of the state house in Virginia and his children, and doubled down when the person was like, you don't want to do that. And now, this was a couple years ago, but the fact that this guy's still in the race is crazy to me. But you might go, well, that was a few years ago. Maybe he's in a bad place, whatever. You don't text people. Not only is that dumb to text somebody something like that, but number two, obviously, it speaks to deeper evil issues. And you might say, well, that was a while ago. Well, this happened today. He pretended to kick a dog at a polling place.
And then he wake up tonight when you get this week. Bye, Red. Say bye-bye. See you soon.
I don't know if he was trying to say hi to the dog by kicking him, but I mean, a guy who kicks an innocent dog, what kind of person is this? It's all adding up, isn't it? Consistently, this guy is not a nice guy. He's a nasty guy. And other quick news point here for you is the FAA is grounded all flights in and out of Regan National Airport due to a security issue on a United Airlines flight that landed from Houston, Texas. All passengers have been offloaded and bused to the terminal, according to Fox. So some kind of bomb threat or some kind of security issue. That's what they're saying. Security issue on this United Airlines flight.
A live look at this hour from Fox 5 Skycam, taking a look at the United Airlines airplane right here that has been moved away from other aircraft at the airport over a security issue.
Okay. So there are rumors online that it's some kind of bomb threat. So I retract that statement. Let's leave it at security issue. Why don't we? Okay, my friends, that's going to do it for today's show. Hope you enjoyed the program. If you did, please like and subscribe and share this post. If you're watching on X, heart the post and repost. Make sure you're following me on X at Ike Wingate, IKEWINGATE, Ike Wingate on X. Please go follow me there now. If you are not, if you would like to help us cover our costs, you can do so via Cash App or Venmo, 5, 10, 20, $500, whatever it is. I mean, we won't discriminate. Whatever it is, if you'd like to help us cover our costs, you can do so at IkeReport.com, IKEReport.com, IkeReport.com. We have our Cash App and Venmo links set up there for you. Okay? All right. We'll be watching the election results tonight. I don't have a triggered liberal. I'm sorry. Normally, I would play that right now. Sorry, I do not have that. But we will be watching those election results with you. Well, not with you. In spirit, we'll be together tonight. And we'll report back on that Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time, Lord willing. 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time on Thursday. Set a reminder. Just set a reminder on your phone or make sure your notifications are on. Do both. And we will see you then. Thanks so much for being here. Have a great night. Remember, the truth matters. I haven't perfected my ending here. I've changed it. We used to say, never stop being a free and critical thinker because the truth is always worth it. After Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I wanted to change it to something better, right? Which is It's not time to back down. It's time to double down because the truth is worth it. Have a great night.
Rate, subscribe, and leave a review. It's how we get the word out amidst the chaos. Thanks for listening to The Ike Wingate Show.